Mark, thank you so much for joining me here at SuperReturn Europe. Great to have you in our studio. As Global Head of Private Credit at Bloomberg, what developments have you seen in that space in the past 12 months and what are you seeing evolving at the moment?
Sure, well, thanks for having me. Look, I think there's been accelerated growth in private credit. Everyone talked about that at the event today. I think it's hard to not to start that conversation with regulation. Obviously, regulation post GFC started that cycle with Basel and Dodd-Frank and the kind of structural shift that we're starting to see in the markets. What that's meant is that the banks have continued to step back from their lending, and the private credit and private capital groups have started to step in. I think during COVID, during regional banking stresses, we really did start to see the banks starting to step back further, public debt markets increasingly inaccessible, in fact shut at certain times. And that's when private capital stepped in and started to show its reliability as a funding source and the ability really to offer cap structures across, offer solutions across the cap structure. And really I think where that's then gone more recently is into spaces like investment grade private credit, to your point. And I think really one of the key factors there is the insurance capital that's been driving that. So insurance capital obviously has long liabilities, looking for long duration assets, but they need to be investment grade in nature. And we've seen a lot of the private credit firms either partnering with or acquiring insurance capital, and that's driven that side of the story.
Your panel at the event was entitled Bridging Public and Private Credit.
Yep.
I mean, what does that integration look like in practice? You talked there about that shift happening. What does it look like in reality?
Well, I think in reality, if you think about the shift that we've seen with the allocation growth into privates, we're seeing a lot more traditional fixed income asset managers and multi-asset allocators starting to have no longer a 2, 3, 4% allocation to privates, but a 10, 20, 30% allocation to privates, and therefore having to start thinking about public and private credit as a whole. So as we've seen integrated credit platforms from our clients, we've started to look at whether we can build out our solutions to leverage what we already do very well on the public credit side and build in private credit into that. The way I think about that is in two lenses. One, what can we publicly acquire and publicly source data out there to offer transparency and insight into the market? And then two, how can we onboard clients' private deals in a permissioned environment, respecting all the entitlements they would expect, but leveraging all of our existing public credit capabilities. So all the way from origination, due diligence to post-investment deal monitoring, risk management. And that's where the bridging public and private comes in, because really we can start to say that whether you have public or private credit investments, we can offer the same seamless end-to-end workflow solution, but respecting the nature of the market.
You mentioned data there and using data. How did data and analytics play into that picture?
Well, so data obviously is a challenge in private markets. It's very document based, it's pretty unstructured. There's a lack of standardization, even down to the level of identification and things like sector classifications. So the way that we've kind of looked at it is, again, into my analogy of publicly sourcing and privately provided client data, we've been building out a data model that has synergies to public markets, but allows you to have a real consistent taxonomy around how you represent your deals so that you can start to benefit from a lot of the tooling that we already offer. If we think about the data that we're publicly sourcing, we're now extracting from business development companies all of their 10Q, 10K filings where they list all of their holdings. We're at 80 now, we'll be 100% of BDC coverage by year end. And what that means is we've extracted all the underlying loans, turned it into effectively a repository of 10,000 plus direct lending loans, which clients can then use as a data source to understand market trends, market insight, deal activity. So that's really taking data and using it as an indicator of markets. And then it's about marrying that with the deals that clients also bring on themselves in a seamless data model.
Incredible opportunity, and I guess
yes.
It would be amazing if in an interview like this we didn't talk about AI and how that's playing into those capabilities. What are you seeing there, and how much that's affecting this space?
Well, I think firstly from the client perspective, if you want to be able to scale in this market, I think AI plays a role, particularly when you think about due diligence at the start of the process. We've heard in other talks at the conference that people are seeing thousands of deals a year and only actually investing in a handful of them. What does that mean? They need to use methods at their disposal to actually scale their analysis of those potential investments and then make their investment decisions. So I'm seeing a lot of clients starting to leverage AI to do document extraction, insight from deal docs, insight from quarterly reporting, to kind of move from kind of a quarterly financial report into digital data from that quarterly financial report. From our perspective, obviously we have a long-standing role in leveraging AI, whether it's NLP or table-based extraction, and that table-based extraction is basically what we're using for BDCs. So looking at the tables, extracting it into a normalized digital format. One last thing actually, sorry, on that is if you think about the way that data is distributed between GP and LP, often a lot of that fund reporting, performance reporting is still very document based. So we made an investment this year, which is publicly known, into a firm called Daphne, who enables you to digitize fund master data at the GP level and enable digital transformation and distribution through Bloomberg.
So you're talking about transparency on a different level to what we've seen before. How will that benefit the end investor, and why? You talked about transparency there, but you also talked about picky investors in this environment and very choosy investors. So, how will you stand out in terms of looking like you are one of those transparent, businesses that's going to be appealing to be invested in?
Yeah, well, look, I think transparency can come in two folds. It can either be transparent to public or transparent to your direct investor. So I think, again, ultimately, most of the LPs here, if they're doing manager selection, need to be able to go deep into the performance and the holdings of those GPs. And our intention is to facilitate that through giving distribution pipes to enable those communications.
Are you seeing quite a different relationship there, and the expectation level changing between the LPs and the GPs?
We are, yes. I think there's a increasing expectation, and I think as that LP community, even in the institutional space, that is true. As we're starting to see more retail and high net worth capital start to flow into this, there's clearly going to be a more expectation for both transparency and fund structures, which we've seen, which will enable kind of a more regular interval of liquidity or exits. So we've seen that through, obviously BDCs have grown dramatically, interval funds, evergreen funds, semi-liquid funds, all of these facilitate the growth of retail and high net worth as well.
Yeah, trying to find that liquidity in the current market, if you like. And so that's how we're, that people are going to be picking, if you like, and choosing their investments. How will data and the elements you've talked about play into measuring success?
Yep.
That's the other side of it. How do we begin to properly measure that in this environment?
Well, look, I think, again, if we enable clients, as we do today, to bring all of their deals on a permission basis into Bloomberg, whether they are fund commitments or whether they're direct or co-investments, we can represent them within our portfolio and risk management tools alongside their public investments. Then we can offer position, exposure management, reporting, independent valuation, which we're building out now, so you can start to get an independent view of how your investments have performed. And then we expect that with the total portfolio framework that we're seeing increasingly being adopted by the LP community, that really people are going to start adopting public approaches. And what I mean by that is things like multi-asset risk and risk factor models. Again, we have them on the public side, we have them on private funds now, and we're building them out for private credit. I think that will enable clients to really start to have that post-investment lens of their investment.
It looks like the picture's moving pretty quickly for you, and you at Bloomberg are, absolutely able to kind of be there at the forefront of a lot of that because of what you've built, as you described. So just finally now, looking forward into the 2030s, what are you excited about, and where do you think the greatest challenges will lie, but also the opportunities because of that picture?
Well, I think the convergence in the market is going to increase. I think our Bloomberg Intelligence Research Group did a survey in Q3, and that was with market participants, GPs, LPs and banks, and looking at an addressable credit market of around 41 trillion, there was an expectation that in the midterm, private credit could replace almost 15%. So clearly there's a large growth curve to come, and I think that convergence will benefit both ourselves, because clearly we can bring together that public and private end-to-end solution in a connected environment. But also I think it's going to be important to look at private credit broader than just corporate, moving into asset-based finance, which is definitely a big growth area. Data centers, hyperscalers, all of this is definitely a growth perspective, which is why we're also looking at real assets in a very deep sense.
Yeah, infrastructure seems to be at
sure.
the front of people's minds as well, doesn't it? Well, thank you so much. It's been great to talk to you. Great to hear your
Likewise.
insights. Thanks for joining me.
Thanks for having me.